Yeah. I thought I'd missed my chance.
Say your name so we
Oh, Carol. Carol Winstanley. I come from New Zealand. We are a nuclear-free zone. Our nuclear-free came about through the actions of people. And I live on a little island in the Hauraki Gulf, and the boats came out to stop warships coming into our harbour. And we stopped them as well. And these are American warships, so they've never forgotten. And we also went free zone, township by township by township. That's how we became nuclear free, township by township by township.
Thank you.
Okay, now...
Do you have a question?
I'm going to ask you and I do need to give you a little information on this. We're under threat. Our nuclear zone is under threat. Our Navy has invited an American warship into our waters. And what is happening is there is a arms fair being set up in one of the big hotels. So this is happening October. I go back to this, right? I would ask these people, nuclear, and Helen Caldecott, of course, was very much part of that. So I would ask our nuclear experts here and you people, we need support from America. And I would ask, is it possible it could be given? That's my question.
Anybody want to try to answer this?
I think it's a question of what kind of support you're looking for. Moral support is clearly here in this room. I think it's very important for people in places like New Zealand, and certainly this is very true in the NATO countries, to make it clear that the American people do not necessarily support the nuclear policies of the American government, because oftentimes the U.S. government tries to portray opposition to its policies as being anti-American. And in truth, that's not the case. As we have tried to say in conversations with, especially with Canadians, there's an adage here in the United States that friends don't let friends drive drunk. Nations shouldn't let their friends be armed with nuclear weapons. And it's an act of friendship towards the United States to resist the continued existence of a U.S. nuclear arsenal. So I would just encourage you to use that point and make it clear that many Americans would welcome opposition to the U.S. nuclear arsenal.
Thank you. Yes. No, we'll have to go to the next question because of time is very limited. Good. We support you.
Please keep on about this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is a world beyond war, and we're talking of a global movement, and so we don't...
Excuse me,
I
but
think,
others have a
thank you.
talk too.
Why not? You had your chance.
I will not be quiet.
There are other people that want to speak.
And I want other people to speak. I want my point to be made very...
We got it. We got it, honestly. Yeah.
My name is Ellen Barfield. I am the widow of Lawrence Egbert, who ran for PSR president and lost more than anyone else, Ira Helfand. Thank you so much, Odile, for going through the history. This is not new. It has resurged, and thank God it has. But excuse me, Ira, I blame PSR, a lot of other organizations too, for dropping nuclear weapons when the Soviet Union fell and helping the public think that they were no longer a problem. Thank goodness you're back to it. I find it very ironic that you're talking about nuclear winter as if that's a new idea. The history is important. We've been doing this and doing this. We're not going to be successful if we think it's a good idea that's going to succeed because it's a good idea. We've tried and tried and tried. And my question is, will PSR please not drop it again like you did before?
Well, first of all, I was, like everyone else in the PSR family, so terribly saddened by Larry's recent death.
No, it's all right. Go ahead, Ira. Yeah.
I don't think PSR ever dropped the nuclear weapons issue. I've been the chair of the committee within PSR that works on nuclear weapons since the late 1980s, and we've been working on this throughout all that time. It's been very difficult at sometimes, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, to get anybody to listen to us, but we never stopped speaking. And in recent years, that persistence, I think, has paid off, and people are paying much more attention to the nuclear weapons issue now than they did during that period of time. And I assure you, PSR has no intention of ever stopping to talk about this issue.
Another question?
My name is Grace Sharok. I'm from North Carolina, from the Blue Ridge Mountains. Thank you, Dr. Helfand, for your speech. It's scary stuff, very frightening. My question is, maybe it's been done, but do you believe a massive petition gathering signatures and presenting to the president, would that help? Whatever the present president or the future president, has that been done? Would that help maybe to get 500,000 or 1 million signatures on petitions to abolish nuclear weapons?
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been large petition drives in the past, and I think certainly that's a very useful technique, both for making the statement and also for having the conversation with people. To get people to sign a petition, you have to explain to them why it's important for them to do it. And one of the problems that we're dealing with is that people just aren't paying attention to this issue. The way I would phrase that petition, if we were going to do one now, is in this way. We, in the United States, have a very fundamental choice. The government has proposed that we spend $1 trillion to modernize our nuclear arsenal. The rest of the world is saying we should get rid of all of our nuclear weapons. That's the choice, which way we're going to go. We can spend the $1 trillion, have nuclear weapons for the next 60 years or until we blow ourselves up, whichever comes first. Or we can make a more intelligent decision to not spend that money and to support the efforts that people all around the world are pushing for the nuclear weapon states to actually get rid of their nuclear arsenals. And this is going to be a real, I mean, it's not like a theoretical decision would have to be made. This is going to come before the Congress. Are we going to authorize this $1 trillion expenditure? And there's also going to be a question of what the U.S. government does, how vigorously they continue to oppose the movement for a nuclear ban treaty. So a petition, I think, might be a very effective mechanism for that. I also think people just need to speak up. They need to write letters to the editor. They need to write op-eds for their local newspapers. If they're in church groups, they need to get their church groups to do this. We need to start to create the kind of buzz that we did create successfully in the 80s, where everyone worried about nuclear war. And we should all be as worried now as we were then. And so what we as individuals can do is to just keep talking about this and try to make that buzz real. Odile?
There is an expert who tells us that right now it's a more dangerous time than during the Cold War to have a nuclear accident or have a nuclear war. So we have to be very aware and we have to move.
There's a question here and then there. Yeah.
I'm Ken Holland, Vietnam era medic, high school history teacher. My question, and then I'll give a little background why the question, is there any sympathy, well there must be some, within the military? They can be our best allies. Now the reason I raised that question, and obviously they're in a minority, but in 1983, at the local high school in Syracuse, I had a major and a colonel. One would role play the Russian and the other would role play an American. And at that point in time, there were 10,000 warheads. 500 would destroy the earth. And they were the most effective speakers. I'm wondering to what extent there are whistleblowers or people, they don't advertise themselves, but they can be our most effective allies.
There is a defense monitor that has many of the military people involved in that, and they do speak up about it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, my name is Robin Lloyd from Wilf, Burlington, Vermont. I sort of woke up from the nuclear freeze in the spring when I heard about the open-ended working group that was working through this proposal for the General Assembly, largely from emails from Alice Slater. And that's the main reason I'm here today, is feeling that we may have a chance to try to build up public opinion again and an awareness of this terrible threat that hovers over us. So very short-term activities would be what we're doing in Burlington is holding a meeting as sort of a report back on this conference next week. And what I hope will come out of that is whatever, candlelight ceremonies or vigils at the time that this is brought before the United Nations in October, and just to try to build awareness as to this this development, because I think people are so negative about the possibility of any change. So I'm very grateful for both your presentations here today.
Thank you. I'd like to comment that one of the things that we should be doing is visiting with 3 or 4 neighbors or friends, our member of Congress at home, and sit down with them and tell them, what do you mean we're spending $1 trillion over the next, our schools are falling apart. We don't, our children are going hungry, and you can't use these. I mean, we got to just make sensible. What are they for? I mean, we can never use them. We haven't used them since 1945, and so. Yeah. Yeah, well,
How many congressmen have signed on?
One.
No, it's more than that.
No, over the years more, but the new one it's two.
Our one congressman.
Fine, no, but we don't get many. I mean, we've been doing this resolution for years, so come with that resolution. Definitely ask them to sign and ask them why. A bill.
It's a bill called HR 1976. It's a Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Economic and Energy Conversion Act. And we need many more Congress people to support this.
Let me talk about a few obstacles. We now have the whole world, at least 130 nations, are prepared to say nuclear weapons are illegal, they are prohibited, they should be banned like chemical and biological weapons. We have never done that. We have this dopey non-proliferation treaty where the 5 countries, US, UK, China, England, and France, said, we'll make good faith efforts to get rid of our nuclear weapons if the rest of you don't get them. And everybody signed except India, Pakistan, and Israel. Then, to sweeten the pot of this stupid treaty, we promised them an inalienable right to peaceful nuclear power. Inalienable right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and peaceful nuclear power. And the reactors are bomb factories. North Korea signed, walked out, and made its bomb. Iran was about to, that was what all this fuss was about Iran. And right now, I have a little list of who still wants and is trying to get nuclear power while we have this global warming, and it's billions of dollars, and you could, for the cost of a couple of nuclear power plants, you could put solar panels on every roof on the planet and windmills and, all that stuff. So anyway, Belarus, United Arab Emirates, Lithuania, Turkey, Bangladesh, Jordan, Poland, and Vietnam, and Saudi Arabia are trying to put nuclear power in their countries.
And that's why we need this Middle East weapon nuclear-free zone, because if we don't move on it fast, it's going to be a development all over the Middle East of nuclear weapon. It could move very fast on that.
But what I wanted to say, which Bruce whispered in my ear, this was all an introduction. We can't get our country to sign this ban treaty. They wouldn't even go to the open-ended working group. Those 5 nuclear powers boycotted the meeting that came out of the UN, and now there's going to be a ban treaty. But we have done certain things that we have to back off so we can deal with Russia, which is we walked out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty that we had with the Soviet Union since 1972, and we are now we put missiles in Poland and Romania. We promised Gorbachev that we promised Gorbachev that if they didn't object to Eastern Germany being part of NATO, we would not expand NATO one step to the east. We're now up to their border. And please remember, no matter what terrible things the mass media is telling you about Putin and Russia, that they lost 27 million people to the Germans. And Putin offered Clinton to cut we then had like 15,000 nuclear weapons, to cut to 1,000 each and call everybody to the table to negotiate, but don't put missiles in Poland and Romania. Clinton said no deal. Gorbachev offered Reagan, let's get rid of all the nuclear weapons, but don't do Star Wars. Reagan said no deal. You know, Star Wars, the document says, controlling and dominating the military use of space to protect U.S. interests and investments. That's what our military says it's for. This. And one other thing you got to know, China and Russia proposed in 2008 and again last year a model treaty to ban weapons in space, and we blocked it. We would not even allow it to be discussed at the Committee on Disarmament in Geneva, which is where you negotiate and they need consensus, so they can't do anything. That's why this open-ended working group is great. It's in the General Assembly and the countries can vote, and we have a majority. So after we get this ban treaty, which is going to have no nuclear weapon states, then we got to use what we call the weasel states, the NATO alliance, and South Korea and Australia, and who else is in Europe?
Need to wrap it up.
Japan. Oh, Japan would not agree to this. I mean, the ones that suffered from, they're part of our military alliance. So we have to work with our colleagues all over the world to push those governments into the ban treaty and then finally embarrass the United States. Maybe Jeremy Corbyn will get his way and we'll have a nuclear weapon state saying, I don't want him anymore. You know, I mean, there are possibilities. So,
if I could make a comment, too, about
on that,
what you're saying about Burlington. If there's one thing that people can do, I think, that's really important in the next month, it's to try to get some local press attention to the fact that the UN is going to be voting on the ban treaty. There's been like a total blackout on this in the U.S. press. I mean, it's just not reported at all. And probably the most effective way to do this is to write letters to the editor. You know, you need a news hook. Well, there's going to be a hook. There's actually going to be a vote at the UN. And to write in something about, you know, there's all kinds of information about this on the ICANN website, www.icanw.org. Easy to put together a simple letter to the editor saying this is an incredibly powerful and important development in world history. The U.S. should stop blocking this and should join this movement. And there's a real chance to move forward and abolish nuclear weapons. That would be a really powerful and useful thing to do, and it's easy.
Thank you, and we're out of time. I know we all have incredible thoughts about this because we're living with the bomb forever, but we're out of time, and let's continue this. Yeah.